The Reformation might seem like a really, really long time ago, and it's hard to remember why we might spend so much time recalling it, because it's hard to remember just why it matters. I mean, the church has been like this for as long as we can remember, or our parents, or our grandparents, or our great-grandparents for that matter, but the church has not always been like this. It's hard to recall or believe that there was a time when being Catholic or Eastern Orthodox was your choices of being a follower of Jesus. It's hard to believe that there was a time when you would go to church and would never hear a language spoken that you spoke. It's hard to believe that there was a time when you would not have a Bible of your own, or maybe even 5, in your actual house. But despite all of this, today is not just a history lesson. It's about the now, and it's about the tomorrow. This past week, as I was pondering and reflecting on the Reformation, that time when the church with a capital C was experiencing big change, I read this post by Pastor Laura Groen, and she wrote this: "The institutional church resembles nothing so much as a Blockbuster video circa 2008 or so. In the early 2000s, the way we were renting movies changed drastically. Some of us still loved the Friday night ritual of driving to the store, browsing the aisles, and coming home with a few movies and an armful of junk food. But others of us were beginning to like picking out movies ahead of time and having them mailed to our house. And Blockbuster didn't notice. And that led to their bankruptcy in 2010. Now, this is my thoughts here. I don't know about you, but I have a lot of nostalgia for my local movie store. It was in a strip mall down the street from our house, and I would walk into this store and there'd be front covers of all the VCR tapes on the walls, and I would grab a little tag that it was a circle with a metal ring around it, and it was on a hook, and I would grab that tag and I would take that tag up to the cranky and bored teenager working that afternoon, and I would hand that to them, and they would hand me back a VCR tape. Now, this was not a Blockbuster, because my town did not have a Blockbuster, but you get the idea. Anyway, Groen continued as they shift from talking about Blockbuster to talking about church. Humans will always love sharing stories about each other. It seems to be one of our universal characteristics, and it doesn't seem to be any less important than the stories we told around a fire in a cave. I believe that humans will always want to hear about God's unconditional love for us and gather in spiritual communities to experience it together. But there will be always cultural shifts in what it looks like, what kind of models those communities follow. There was a time recently when we dominated the field, and our members remember that, they wrote. But this success is already gone. The world is changing in deep and fundamental ways, and that are already making our current models for business obsolete. We notice that our own individual store, congregation, might be struggling. And we like to blame our managers, pastors, and we stand in our own Blockbusters complaining. Now, dear church, this is Iona here. I give you lots of credit. You are not blaming me, and we continue to thrive as a church. But there have been hints of, remember when we used to have, insert whatever we used to have. Or remember when there used to be lots of, insert your favorite answer. It's true. The church is changing. Groen went on, "We have such fond memories of Blockbuster. We took our kids there, they squealed with joy, we felt like a family. But the kids don't want to go there anymore. They must hate families. This current generation no longer cares about the universal human drive for stories. How dare they let our Blockbusters go out of business? Hey, that Blockbuster store over there seems to be doing a little better than us. Let's figure out what they're doing. They have a Thursday night special on candy. Maybe we can get some customers if we have a sale on candy and popcorn." Now, I want you to hang on to your hats, friends, because Groen is about to get even more real. They continue. "But friends, we can blame the next generation all we want, or steal the ideas of some better managers across town, but Blockbuster is still going out of business. And so will our congregations, if we don't notice the culture shift and stop blaming everyone else. But if Blockbuster had changed its model, it could have been thriving today. We can too. How are people experiencing God's love in new ways? What do their communities look like? What are they doing already that is even better than what we are doing? We can thrive too if we celebrate and get on board with what God is already doing. If not, people will still gather to hear God's story, and they'll probably invite us to join in. But it won't be our institutions anymore. It will be theirs. Take a deep breath. That was a lot. The Reformation seems to be the perfect time to talk about shifting understandings of the church. Generation after generation reads the same scriptures and comes up with slightly different ways to understand it. On Reformation Day, we remember the great reformers, and we celebrate that they had a vision for the Christian church and how we might live together. We remember that they envisioned a church that looked so different from the churches they knew. A church where people would read the Bible for themselves. A church where it would happen in their own native languages. This was a huge, radical departure from the big C, capital C church of the time. Those reformers dreamed of a church that focused on faith and not just works. Another radical departure for the capital C church. So friends, this is not the first time that it feels like the sand is shifting underneath our feet. Yes, church is changing now. And we don't exactly know where it's headed, but we can trust that as change happens, the importance of gathering and connecting around faith won't change. Maybe it'll continue on Sunday mornings. Maybe not. Maybe it'll be here in a church. Maybe it'll be in a park or a pub or a home, or who knows. Maybe it'll be an hour once a week. Maybe not. Maybe we will begin to consider the strength of the church not based on the number of people who are in worship, but on the numbers of people who gather throughout the week. Maybe we will, as my friend, the Reverend Ann Cansfield says, consider different benchmarks of success. At her church, she tells how the church is doing based on how much trash and recycling is going out each week, because one of their thriving ministries is a soup kitchen. And if that soup kitchen is not operating, there is almost no trash. And when the soup kitchen is thriving, the trash and the recycling are filled. So there's lots of different ways we can consider what church might be. So today we can remember that Luther wrote down his dream about the church on a piece of paper, and he nailed it to the front door of the church. And the leaders of that church read those thoughts and that vision and knew the church would have to change to live out that dream. That took serious courage. And he was so criticized that he was kicked out of the church. But he was calling the church to be something different than it was. So, church, what's our dream? We are nowhere near closing the doors like the Blockbusters of old. But we can't ignore the world around us either. The value of gathering is so vital that we have to figure out how to continue what matters and adapt the things that might need to be adapted. God will continue to be our refuge and strength. We will continue to be followers of Jesus. I don't know what that's going to look like. I don't know exactly what we'll look like in a decade or two from now, but I know we won't be the same. Just like we're not the same church that Doug and Betty first began on this corner in University City nearly 60 years ago. Just as we're not the same church as we were before the pandemic began 2.5 years ago. But, and that's the key, but we will continue to be a place and a people that welcomes all. We will continue to be a place and a people that love. We will continue to be a place and a people that follow Jesus. That won't change. That will remain. And the rest? Let's wait and see what God's up to. Shall we? Amen.